Today we're going to continue with our class presentation of the Fiqh. Today is the 30th part of this class, and we are studying the prayer, and this is part 11 of the prayer. The Gregorian date is the 28th of December 2022, and the Hijri date is the 5th.
Jumaadaa Al-Thani,
1444. Today, inshallah, we're going to go from page 146 in the book if you have it. It is the title of voluntary prayers. Their virtues. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu reported that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, the first deeds for which the servant of Allah will be held accountable on the day of judgment will be his prayers. If they are sound, he will have prospered and been rescued. If they are rotten, he will be miserable and be at loss. If there was some deficiency in his obligatory prayers, the Lord will say, see if he has any voluntary prayers with which may be completed that which was wanting in his obligatory. See if he has any voluntary prayers with which may be completed that which was wanting in his obligatory prayers. Then the rest of his obligatory deeds will be judged in like fashion.
Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa mawala. Amma ba'd. Salat al-Tatawwu, the voluntary prayer. First of all, he brought us the hadith of the Prophet of Allah that the Salat al-Tatawwu will become a compensation for the missed obligatory. One of the great blessings that the people do not pay attention to. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made these voluntary acts, whether it's voluntary acts in prayer, or voluntary acts in fast, or voluntary acts in charity, like zakah, we have sadaqah, or voluntary in hajj, we have umrah, and voluntary hajj. Those voluntary are, as I said, ni'mah from Allah. Imagine a person had lost a prayer deliberately from the obligatory. There's no way for him to compensate the prayer. There's no way for him to pull the earth the other way around in order to reverse the time. Time is gone. So if you missed the Dhuhr deliberately, you can't compensate for that because the time of it is gone. There's no such thing as called qaza. That's qaza, or they call it qaza, is qada. Qada is the one that a person he had, for example, slept through the time, forgot the time of the prayer, then he has an option to make this prayer whenever he remembers it or whenever he wakes up. But he had deliberately pushed the prayer outside his time. No way he can compensate except by this ni'mah of Allah, the voluntary. So the first benefit from the voluntary prayer is to compensate the missed obligatory. Because Allah Azza wa Jalla, the day of resurrection, when the angels inspect the deeds of the person, and they find some of the obligatory prayers are missing, he would say to his angels, look into his voluntary and compensate what is missed from his obligatory. Then I just ask Abbas to come closer, inshallah, fill up the gaps, fill up the gaps, come closer, Ibrahim, Abu Ismail, fill up the gaps. Fine, yes. Get forward, everybody, get forward. Barakallahu fikum. Second benefit, write that down. You're not going to forget it. Second benefit is that it's a protection for the obligatory. So, person who prays his sunnah on voluntary plus his obligatory, if he's in his lazy time, he will start to bite into his voluntary, meaning that he will skip sunnah before, sunnah after, voluntary. He will skip it, but still his obligatory protected. But if he has no voluntary, if he's in his lazy time, he might bite into his one. It's obligatory. So that's the benefit of it, is to protect your obligatory. The person who's got voluntary and obligatory, very hard for him to miss any obligatory. But the person who is not keen about doing his voluntary prayer, you know for a fact that he could neglect some of his obligatory. True? True. Third benefit. And that is, Allah's Messenger, he had said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he said, that man adali waliyan faqad adantuhu bil harb. He who does have an enmity towards my wali, while he's close to Allah, I will declare war on him. وما تقرب إلي عبدي أحب إلي مما افترضته عليه. And my slave never got closer to me in anything more dear to me than what I have made obligatory upon him. So the best thing to get closer to Allah and to be an wali of Allah, for Allah to love you, is to embark upon your obligatory. No doubt about that. But then he said, وَمَا زَالَ عَبْدِي يَتَقَرَّبُ إِلَيَّ بِالنَّوَافِلِ حَتَّى أُحِبَّهُ. But my slave still continues to get closer to me until I love him. Until قال حتى أحبه فأكون سمعه الذي يسمع به وبصره الذي يبصر به ورجلاه التي يمشي بها ويده التي يبطش بها. That I will become his hearing, his seeing, his walking feet, and his hand. What does that mean? Allah is going to go into you? No, we don't believe in hulul. Hulul means that, what do you call it? Reincarnate, not incarnate, to take the body of somebody else. We don't believe in that. But Allah means He will make sure that what you hear, it what pleases Him. He will make sure that your eyes sees what pleases Him. He will make sure that what your hand is going to deal with is what pleases Him, halal. And what your feet is going to go to is going to be halal. So these are the three benefits from the voluntary. That's a blessing. People, they don't know about the blessings of the voluntary. People who pray their duha, people who pray sunnat al-fajr, people who pray sunnat al-wudu, people who pray sunnat, for example, tasbih, people who pray for example, the afternoon dhuhr, which is before and after dhuhr. The people who praise the sharaf al-shuruq, which is the after sunrise, 20 minutes or 10 minutes. All of those, they have more closer to Allah. Very hard for them to lose their obligatory prayer. Whereas those people are just, I do dhuhr. No sunnah before. Okay. But they bite into their obligatory one day. When they are lazy, they'll skip it. They keep a closed eye. So this is the benefits of the tatawwu. Three benefits we have mentioned. I'll mention them again. Number one is no way you can compensate the missed obligatory deliberately except by this voluntary. Number two is that it's a protection. Number three, you get closer to Allah so much that whatever you hear, whatever you see, whatever you do, whatever you walk, is all of it pleasing Allah Azza wa Jalla. Now, this voluntary prayer is more rewardable if you do it in the house. Fadl.
It is preferred for them to be prayed at home. Jabir radiallahu anhu narrated that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, if one of you performs the prayers in his masjid, he should reserve a portion of his prayers for his house, as then Allah will make in his house due to his prayer goodness. And Zayd ibn Thabit radiallahu anhu narrated that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, you should pray in your houses, for the best prayer of a man is that in his house, save for the obligatory prayers.
So the best of the prayer is in your house, save the obligatory prayer. Obligatory prayer is where the call of the prayer is to be called, which is the masajid. Now, do you know how much difference between praying at home, your voluntary, to pray it in the masjid? Just for those people who pray the Isha and they start praying Taraweeh, their witr in the masjid. Please, if I tell you, barakallah, that you have, barakallah, 10 pounds for each, 10 pounds for each prayer that you do, okay, in the masjid, you're voluntary. But you're going to get, one pound. In fact, if you pray your voluntary in the masjid, 1 pound you're going to get. But if you pray it in the house, you're voluntary, you're going to get 1,000 pounds. Would you be praying it in the masjid? Come on. Would you? No way. So why people pray it in the masjid?
Convenience.
Convenience. Could be laziness. Could be he doesn't know. Yes? Yeah. It could be habit. It could be something that you have habitual. So let's just change this habit. Once for all. Prophet ﷺ, he said, add this hadith to this one. The difference of the person praying his voluntary in his house to that if he prayed it in the masjid is like the difference of praying his obligatory in my masjid, not my masjid Abu Sa'id, Prophet masjid, to the praying in his house. What's the difference? Okay. The difference of praying your voluntary prayer in your house to that if you prayed in the masjid is the same difference if you prayed your obligatory in the masjid of the Prophet to that in your house. How much is the difference? How much do you get as a multiple for if you pray the obligatory in the masjid of the Prophet of Allah? Anybody? Huh? 1,000. You get 1,000. 1,000 pounds, huh? Better than that. 1,000. Whereas if you pray it at home, is one. No multiple. So the sunnah will be 1,000 if you prayed it at home, rather than to pray it in the masjid of the Prophet of Allah. Never mind the masjid of Maidenhead. 1,000, that's the difference. So praying the voluntary is the best of the prayer, Prophet. And this hadith is triggered from the mouth of the Prophet, whom his body is in the best of two locations, Medina and Mecca. He was not living in Ta'if, he was not living in Riyadh, he was living in Mecca and Medina. So his mouth, when he triggered this hadith, the best of the prayer is the prayer in the house, except and save the obligatory. He triggered it while he was in the Haram of Medina or the Haram of Mecca. You understand me? Most likely Haram of Medina. So which one is now to pray the voluntary prayer better? In the Masjid of the Prophet, a voluntary, or in the house? In the house. Definitely, it's not going to be better to pray your voluntary in the Masjid of Maidenhead than to pray it in your house. We want to kill this sunnah, which I've seen everybody prays the Isha. So they will start out with the sunnah. Habit. Go home, akhi. Get 1,000. Better for you. As I said, it's ignorance or convenience or habit, or maybe he doesn't know, whatever. We want to pray our sunnah unless there is no time, because I'm going to sit from the Maghrib to the Isha, there's a class. Then I have to pray my sunnah in the masjid. No problem, but I'm just saying, every time you have an opportunity to pray your voluntary in the house, pray it. So for example, let's say that the Fajr prayer comes in as Jama'ah well after the Fajr kicks in. So the Fajr kicks in, let's say for example, I'm saying for the sake of example, 6 o'clock, our time for Jama'ah 6:30. Pray your sunnah at home before you come here. When you come here, you only pray your 2 rak'at Tahiyyat al-Masjid and you sit. And if there is no Tahiyyat al-Masjid, you should sit. If it's not just not a masjid, let's say it's a hall, okay? There's no Tahiyyat al-Masjid, you sit down. And then you wait to pray the Fajr. Sunnah Fajr, which is the 2 rak'ah. So we learned, alhamdulillah, that the best of the sunnah is in the house. And I'll tell you another hadith, add it. Prophet ﷺ said, لا تتخذوا بيوتكم قبورا. Don't take your houses as a graveyard. وَاجْعَلُوا مِنْ صَلَاتِكُمْ فِيهَا. And make some of your prayers in it. Some people, look at him, he doesn't pray any prayer. Obligatory, I understand, but even the voluntary. Not a single prayer in his house. Masjid, he thinks it's good. It's not good. You're taking your house as a cemetery. It's a graveyard, because the graveyard is the place where you don't pray. So you have to have some of the, I'm not talking about, oh, let me pray my obligatory in the house. The Sheikh said it's good to pray in the house because otherwise it's going to be a graveyard. No. I'm talking about the voluntary. I'm not talking about the obligatory. Obligatory, here. In the Jama'ah. If it's convenient for you, if it's not far away for you, pray it here. Sunnah, at home. Always at home. Now. Another place.
The types of voluntary prayers. Number one, voluntary prayers are of the specific variety or of the unrestricted variety. The specific or restricted voluntary prayers are what are known as the regularly performed sunnah prayers before and after the obligatory prayers. They are subdivided into emphasized and non-emphasized.
Right. So he says here that the tatawwu is of two categories. Category which is general, and the other one is restricted. It's like it's limited. He says the restricted one is the one we call it linked to the prayer. Sunnah ratiba, like Dhuhr has got 2 before or 4 before, 2 after or 4 after. Like the Asr has got 2 after, or the Maghrib has got 2 after, the Isha has got, the 2 after. Those are called Sunnah ratiba. Fajr has got 2 before, yes? It's called Sunnah ratiba. So these are limited or restricted to the obligatory prayer. These are the ones will fall when you travel. When you travel, you don't pray these prayers. So if you pray your Dhuhr, when you travel, you pray 2 rak'ah. You don't pray 2 sunnah before, 2 after. As Abdullah ibn Umar, he said, well, you might as well make your 2 4. Why do you pray 2 sunnah? Better make your 2 rak'ah, 4 rak'ah. But Allah gave you concession. You pray the 2, to stick to the 2. So those are the restricted sunnah, which is related sunnah to the obligatory. They drop down, they drop off, except for 2 types. Ones, which is sunnah al-fajr, it does not drop. And also sunnatul witr, it does not drop, even if you travel it. Right. This is called the Sunnah Ratiba. He says the Sunnah Ratiba here, which is before or after the prayer, they are of two types. Either mu'akkada, emphasize, or غير mu'akkada, not emphasize. Now, talk about the mu'akkada.
The 10 rak'ah of emphasized Sunnah prayers. Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu said, I preserved from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam 10 rak'ahs, 2 rak'ahs before the noon prayer, as well as 2 after it, 2 after the sunset prayer, 2 after the night prayer, and 2 before the morning prayer. The latter was a time in which no one would meet the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Hafsa radiallahu anha informed me that when the caller to prayer made the call and dawn had appeared, he would pray 2 rak'ah. Aisha radiallahu anha said, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam would not miss 4 rak'ah before the noon prayer and the 2 before the morning prayer.
Right. So he chose in the author the following 10 emphasized Sunnah Ratiba. He said 4 before Dhuhr, and then 2 after Dhuhr. How many rak'ah? 6. Then 2 after Maghrib. How many? Count with me, please. How many? 8. And then he would pray 2 after Isha. How many there are? 10. Then he says that when he does as well the Fajr, when he can Fajr, he must 2. So you've got what? 12. So the ones he had done, 4 before Dhuhr, 2 after Dhuhr, 2 after Maghrib, 2 after Isha, 2 before Fajr. How many altogether? 12. 12 rak'ah, according to Aisha radiallahu anha, which has been narrated. And also, the Prophet of Allah, he said, Man sallat natay ashrata rak'ah, he prays 12 rak'ah, that is from the rawati, from the voluntary, in the day and the night, Allah will build him a house in paradise. Okay, so we've got this is 12. Some scholars made them more, some scholars made them less. The scholars who made them 12 are more than the scholars who have made them less. Yes, there are more. Some scholars added to this prayer the following, which is emphasized, and that is the 2 rak'ah after Asr. After Asr, yes. There's 2 rak'ah on the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said that Aisha, she said, he never left praying 2 rak'ah after Asr. And this is controversial amongst the scholars, because there's a hadith which says there's no prayer after Asr. But the full hadith is there's no prayer after Asr as long, unless the sun is white and pure. In another narration, white and high. So as long as the sun is white and high, there is a prayer. It is only that you should not pray when the sun turns into yellowish or reddish. This is before sunset. This is where the time you're not supposed to pray any sort of linked prayer, like sunnah before or sunnah after. Okay, but if there's a prayer of voluntary, listen to me please, if a prayer of voluntary, which has a reason, it doesn't matter, even if you prayed it before sunset. So you came to the masjid, there's something called Tahiyyat al-Masjid. You don't sit down until you pray. Somebody might say, but this is a prohibited time. Prohibited time, which is, remember when we said prohibited time? When the sun is setting. So when the sun sets, prohibited time. You say to him, this is exempted, because it's a prayer which got a reason. And I said, even it is strongest prayer in terms of voluntary, because you can't sit without praying. So much that even during the time that any prayer is prohibited, yet Tahiyyat al-Masjid, it has to be done. Which time is it? What is the most prohibited time that you can't do any prayer? No. Huh? Jum'ah khutbah. Well done. Jum'ah khutbah. See, coming to the class. Jum'ah khutbah. When you Jum'ah khutbah, you're not allowed to stand up and I remembered I didn't pray my Fajr before. You can't. You have to sit and listen. Except for Tahiyyat al-Masjid. You have to pray it before you sit. So much that the Prophet of Allah interrupted his khutbah. When he saw a person sat down, his name is Sulaik al-Ghatafani. Sulaik, did you pray? Because he sat down. Prophet of Allah, no, I did not pray. He said, stand up. This is the khutbah. He's in the khutbah. Stand up and pray 2 rak'ah and make them light. Meaning don't recite Baqarah until I finish the khutbah. Make them light. Fatiha, and that's it. So he make them light. So he prayed and made them light. So the Prophet of Allah interrupted the khutbah. Something, imagine that he's Allahu Akbar, and then somebody hasn't prayed. Have you prayed? No, stand up, pray 2 rak'ah. It's very important. Interrupt the khutbah and tell him to go and pray 2 rak'ah. So he stood up and prayed 2 rak'ah. And that hadith as well is very important to tell these people who said, if I sat down, khalas, tahit al-masjid tasqut, that means there's no need. No, so he sat down, he made him to stand up to pray the 2 rak'ah. So any prayer has got a reason, you could pray them at that time. Coming back. So the Asr, 2 rak'ah after Asr, is actually controversial. But the correct opinion, there is 2 rak'ah after Asr, which is sunnah. If a person wants to pray it, as long as he doesn't pray it when the sun becomes yellowish. طيب, let's go to the one which is not emphasized.
These are the 2 before the Dhuhr, Asr, and Maghrib prayers. Abdullah ibn Mughaffal.
So here it says 2 rak'ah before Asr, 2 rak'ah before Maghrib, and 2 rak'ah before Isha. Remember, I'm not talking about 2 rak'ah after Asr. This is before Asr. So these before Asr, before Maghrib, and before Isha, they are not emphasized. Fadal. Abdullah ibn Mughaffal, yallah.
Abdullah ibn Mughaffal radiallahu anhu narrated that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, between the 2 calls there is a prayer. Between the 2 calls there is a prayer. Upon saying that a 3rd time he said, for whoever wills. Between the 2 calls, you know what it's called? 2 calls, anybody? Adhan al-Iqamah. ما بين الأذانين صلاة. He called the Iqamah Adhan. ما بين الأذانين صلاة. So if there's an Adhan of Asr, and there's a Iqamah of Asr, there's 2 rak'ah before. Then he said, liman sha, to whoever he wishes. If you don't want to stand up, it's okay to pray 2 rak'ah. Okay, because it's not emphasized. Fadl. It is preferred to perform 4 rak'ah before the afternoon prayer. Before the Asr, Shaykh. Don't say afternoon. I don't know what's the afternoon prayer. Before Asr. 4 rak'ah before Asr. I don't know the afternoon and noon. No. Ali radiallahu anhu said the Prophet used to pray 4 rak'ahs before the Asr prayer. He would separate between them. He would separate between them by giving salutations upon the angels near and those who followed them of the Muslims and the believers. Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu narrated that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "May Allah have mercy on a person who prays 4 before the Asr prayer." But it's not mu'akkadah. It is not mu'akkadah. So the mu'akkadah is not part of that because it will become 16 rak'ah mu'akkadah. So the correct opinion is 12 rak'ah. So it's not from mu'akkadah, but it's good to observe 4 before Asr and 2 after Asr. So the Asr prayer, remember which one is the Salat al-Wusta? Al-Asr. Most correct opinion is the Asr. So Salat al-Wusta, وَحَافِظُوا عَلَى الصَّلَوَاتِ وَالصَّلَاةِ Wusta. Observe the prayer and that what? The Wusta prayer. So Asr is the Wusta prayer. And it's the one where Sulaiman alayhi when he missed it, Darban, he had hit, or he had actually struck the camels. All the story is as well some sort of narration regarding it, but the Asr prayer. And also the Asr prayer, the Prophet when he had missed it because of the people of Banu Qurayza, you remember? شغلونا عن صلاة العصر ملأ الله بيوتهم وقبورهم نارا. May Allah fill their houses and their graves with fire because they have made us to miss Salat al-Asr. The ones who were surrounding the Medina. You know what I'm talking about, huh? Yeah, from Banu Qurayza. I'm not going to go further than that. What has been reported concerning the Prophet reciting in some of these prayers? Aisha radiallahu anha narrated that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam had said, "Excellent are the 2 surahs that are read in the 2 rak'ahs before the morning, before the Fajr prayer. Say, O you who believe, and say He is Allah the One." Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu also said, "The Messenger of Allah would recite in the 2 rak'ahs before the Fajr prayer, say, O you who disbelieve, and say He is Allah the One." Let me just ask you, did you write this is title here? It is recommended to make tatawwu between Maghrib and Isha. Did you do that? It's in this book. Huh? It's not in the book. Okay, so I'm going to add an addition here. That's what I'm just looking. Why didn't you read this? It is recommended to make a voluntary prayer between Maghrib and Isha. Hudayfa, he said that I came to the Prophet ﷺ and I prayed with him the Maghrib. Then he kept praying until the Isha. So you could pray as much as you want, tatawwu, voluntary between Maghrib and Isha. And then Anas, he said, regarding the ayah, تَتَجَافَى جُنُوبُهُمْ عَنِ الْمَضَاجِعِ, that is their sides forsake their beds, and they don't sleep. يَدْعُونَ رَبَّهُمْ خَوْفًا وَطَمَعًا, call unto their Lord in fear and hope. That he said that they used to
make the prayer between Maghrib and Isha. And he says here now regarding the recitation of the Prophet ﷺ in some of these salawat. Yes, that's the one. And then he said, Aisha, that the Prophet of Allah used to say the best of the two surahs, good surahs, are to be recited in surah to the rak'ah fajr. Qul huwallahu ahad, qul ya ayyuhal kafirun. And also the Prophet of Allah, he had read in the two rak'ah, according to Abu Hurairah, qul ya ayyuhal kafirun, qul huwallahu ahad. So it's the same emphasis. And also Abdullah ibn Abbas, he said that the Prophet of Allah used to recite the following in the two rak'ah of the Fajr, and that is قُولُوا آمَنَّا بِاللَّهِ وَمَا أُنزِلَ إِلَيْنَا, and also آمَنَّا بِاللَّهِ وَاشْهَدْ بِأَنَّا مُسْلِمُونَ, and that is in Surah Ali Imran. And also Abdullah Mas'ud, he said, I've never counted how many times, so many times that the Prophet of Allah he would recite in the two rak'ah of after Maghrib, and also before Fajr, قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا الْكَافِرُونَ قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ. So you have this option, Surah قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا الْكَافِرُونَ and قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ, that's in the two rak'ah before Fajr, two sunnah. And also the two rak'ah, which is after Maghrib, also recite the same thing. And these are being emphasized by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We coming down to a salah, it's called Al-Witr. Fadal.
The witr prayer, the prayer made up of an odd number of rak'ahs. The ruling and excellence of the witr prayer. The witr prayer is an emphasized sunnah that the Prophet ﷺ strongly encouraged. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu narrated that the Messenger of Allah ﷺ said, verily Allah is odd and He loves the odd in number.
Allah witr. يحب الوتر. And also Ali
Ali radiallahu anhu said, the witr prayer is not mandatory like your obligatory prayers, but the Messenger of Allah used to perform the witr prayer. And he then said, O people of the Quran, verily Allah is odd and He loves the odd in number.
Right. So yeah, O people of Quran, make witr. Ya Ahl al-Qurani awtiru, fa inna Allah witrun yuhibbul witr. So the witr prayer, which consists of the following, either it is the maximum, which is 11 or 13, up to, or down to, I should say, 1 rak'ah. That's the witr. So you're praying 3, or sorry, I'll start with 11, 9, 7, 5, 3, and 1. You could pray the 1, which is called the witr. Now, what is the best time of the witr? Tafadhal.
The time of the witr prayer, it is permissible to perform the witr prayer at any time from after the night prayer until the break of dawn. However,
So he says here, the time of it is after the night prayer until dawn. He didn't say after Isha. He didn't say after Isha. He said what? After the prayer of the Isha. What's the significance of that? Anybody know? He said after the Isha prayer, not after the Isha time. What's the significance of that? So that means if you combined your Maghrib and Isha, the time of the Maghrib, you could start praying your witr even if it's in the Maghrib time. Do you understand what I'm saying? So if you combine your Maghrib and Isha, for the sake of traveling, for the sake of whatever, at the time of the Maghrib, you could start your pray your witr even if it's at the Maghrib time. So the witr is linked with the Isha prayer, not linked with what? With the Isha time. Okay? That's what he said. He said, Al-Witru after Salat al-Isha until the Fajr. Now, and it is in the best one, last third of the night. The last third of the night.
We said during the last third of the night.
Aisha radiallahu anha, she said,
the Prophet would make witr during every part of the night, the beginning, middle, or last portion of the night. He would finish his witr close to the dawn.
Okay, so the best of the time is when Allah Azza wa Jal, He descends down, descends which is suitable to His Majesty. And that is bil ashar, wa bil ashari hum yastaghfirun. They seeking forgiveness in the ashar. This is the difficult time, which is before Fajr. So if you now look at the time of the night, stretches from Maghrib until Fajr. Maghrib now, for example, kicks in, let's say 4 o'clock. And let's say Fajr, I'm making it easy, 7 o'clock. So 4 to 7. Yes? Maghrib 4 and Fajr is 7. Okay, because I don't want to have 6 and then the half an hour is going to make it difficult for you to calculate. So between 4 and 7, how many hours? How many? 15 hours. Well done. So 15 hours. So half of them is 7.5. So middle of the night is what time? 11:50, 11:30. Do you understand me? So the middle of the night, that's the time where you cannot pray Isha after that. So before that is the Isha time. So 11:30, because 7.5 hours plus 4, it makes it 11:30. You understand that? Right. Now, if I want to divide it now into 3 categories, 15 hours divided by 3, how much is that? 5. So beginning of the night, 5 hours after Isha. The middle of the night, 5 hours after, 10 hours after the Isha. The last of the night, 10 hours after the time of Isha. Do you understand that? Between 7 and 4. 4 is 15 hours. Divided by 3, 5 hours each. So Prophet used to pray in the first 5 hours after Isha. And sometimes he prayed in the awsat, in the 10 hours after Salat al-Isha. That's the witr I'm talking about. Witr, not the Isha prayer. Isha up to midnight. And the best of the times is after 10 hours. 10 hours plus 4 o'clock. How much is that? 2 a.m. So best prayer for your witr at the moment, 2 a.m. until 7 o'clock, which is 6:30, you take Fajr. Until that time. You understand that now? That's the best of the time, after 2 a.m. That's the last third of the night. Now you could calculate what is the third of the night, the middle of the night, and so on and so forth. Go ahead.
It is preferred to perform the witr prayers in the first portion of the night for one who fears that he will not get up in the later portion of the night. Similarly, it is preferred to perform the witr prayer at the end of the night for the one who believes that he will be able to get up at that time.
Right, so we've got 2 situations. You are a person who will actually sleep. Then it's better to witr at the beginning of the night, because you might wake up in the Fajr, you miss the witr. You're a person, mashallah, you're striving to wake up very late night before Fajr. Then it's better for you to pray witr at the end of the night. Now we find here Abu Bakr and Umar. Which one do you think, before you read, before you look, which one of the 2 you think that he prays the end of the night? Is it Abu Bakr or Umar? Put your finger between your light. Come on.
Abu Bakr prays at the end of the night.
You say you think Abu Bakr, he is in the night. Yes, is that what you think, everybody? All of you wrong. Read.
Abu Qatada radiallahu anhu narrated that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to Abu Bakr, "At what time do you pray witr?" He replied, "I pray witr before I sleep."
Before I sleep. Even he's the best. All of you said, because Abu Bakr is the best, he's going to pray it at the end of the night. You're wrong, all of you. He prays it before he sleeps, at the beginning of the night. Secondly,
he then asked Umar, "What time do you pray witr?" He replied, "I sleep and then I pray witr."
MashaAllah, he prays it really late night. But who's better, Abu Bakr or Umar? Without any doubt. If Umar here, and you said to him, Abu Bakr you are better than Abu Bakr, he will kill you. Not hesitate. Okay? Because he's got nothing. He's like a drop in the ocean of Abu Bakr. Umar is a drop in the ocean of Abu Bakr. And Abu Bakr and Umar is a drop in the ocean of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. No comparison. No comparison. But yet, it doesn't mean he is better. He's better in everything. Okay? So here, for example, except for the Prophet, of course, Abu Bakr is better than Umar. But yet, Abu Bakr, he prays the beginning, whereas Umar, he leads to the end. What did the Prophet say to both of them? He said to Abu Bakr,
the Prophet then said to Abu Bakr, "You have taken the safe way."
Safe way. It's safe, because you do it before you sleep. As for Umar,
he said to Umar, "You have taken the strong way."
The strong way, didn't he? You taking the gambling way. No, the strong way. Because he's sure he's not gambling. Oh, I'm asleep, but he's taking the strong way. This one, it's always Abu Bakr the easy way, and always the strong way. Now, but when it comes in violation, the violation of the Bible of Allah, no, Abu Bakr and Umar will be on the strong way, both of them. Radiallahu anhum. Aisha
radiallahu anha said, the Prophet used to pray while I would
sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Yeah.
When he intended to perform the witr prayer, he would wake me and I would also pray with him.
Okay, so don't be scared of your wife. So if you witr the last night, wake her up to pray as well. Don't be scared. Why did you wake me up? Oh, wake her up. So the last 10 nights of Ramadan, Prophet ﷺ said, أيقظ أهله وأحيا ليله وشد مئزره. He will detach himself from sex. No wives, خلاص. Number 2, he will make sure that he will strive in the ibadah. Number 3, he will make sure that he will what? Make his family to what? To participate. Come on, get up, pray with me. And it's not obligatory prayers. It's tarawih, witr. أحيا ليله وأيقظ أهله وشد مئزره. تفضل.
The number of rak'ahs which and the description of the witr.
So how many rak'ah is the witr?
The minimum for the witr prayer is 1 rak'ah.
1 rak'ah is the minimum.
Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu narrated that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, the night's prayer is to be in 2 rak'ah sets. If one of you fears the coming of the morning, he should pray 1 rak'ah, making all that he prayed an odd number. It is also permissible to perform the witr prayer as 3, 5, 7, or 9 rak'ahs. Aisha radiallahu anha said, the Prophet did not used to pray more than 11 rak'ahs, not during Ramadan or at other times. He would pray 4 rak'ahs and do not ask how excellent and lengthy they were. And then he would pray 4 rak'ahs, then he would pray 3. She also said, the Messenger of Allah used to pray 30 rak'ahs during the night. Out of that, he would make witr with 5 rak'ahs, and he would not sit but in the last of them. Aisha radiallahu anha also said, we used to prepare the toothstick and water for him. Allah would awaken him during the night whenever he had willed. Then he would use the toothstick and make ablution. Then he would pray 9 rak'ahs and not sit except in the 8th of them, wherein he would mention Allah, praise him, and supplicate to him. Then he would stand and not make the salutation. He would stand and pray the 9th rak'ah and then sit, remember Allah, praise him, and supplicate to him, and then make the salutation such that we could hear him. Then he would pray 2 rak'ahs while sitting after he had made the salutation. O my son, those are 11 rak'ahs. When the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam aged and became heavier, he would perform witr in 7 rak'ahs and do 2 rak'ahs like what he did before. O my son, that makes 9. If one performs a witr prayer in 3 rak'ahs and then one should read what is described in the following hadith.
Right. Before you go ahead, Abdullah ibn Abbas.
Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu said, the Messenger of Allah used to recite in the witr prayer, read in the name
سبح اسم ربك الأعلى.
and
أن قل يا الكافرون قل هو الله أحد in 1 rak'ah. Right. Let's just now simplify what has been mentioned here. Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, out of his actions, he never prayed more than 11. With the 2 rak'ah of the Sunnah, make it 13, 11 rak'ah. That's what Aisha used to say, and the Prophet of Allah used to pray his witr all the time in the house, and the most knowledgeable out of the wives of the Prophet of Allah regarding the night prayer of the Prophet is Aisha. And nobody had asked her how much the Prophet of Allah, how many rak'ah prays in the Ramadan. Nobody asked her. They said to her, what is the night prayer of the Prophet? So she said, out of her cleverness, she's smart, faqihah, she said, never the Prophet of Allah exceeded 11. She never been asked about Ramadan, but she said, because you might think in Ramadan more ibadah, not even Ramadan, more than 11, whether in Ramadan or outside, always 11. Then, out of his actions, when he got sort of heavy and old, he was praying minimum of his actions 7. So from the action of the Prophet of Allah, never more than 11, and from his actions not less than 7. But from his wordings, Prophet of Allah, he said, let the person even make witr with what? 1 rak'ah. So 1 rak'ah, you're allowed. That's witr. 3 rak'ah, better. 5 rak'ah is better. Then she said about the prayer of the Prophet of Allah. So we have number of ways to pray it. Like we pray to the Taraweeh, for example, 2, 2, 2, 2, when we are 8, then we pray the 3 witr, to make it 11. The 3 witr we pray it either sometimes 3 together in the last tashahhud, or 2 and then 1. True or not? That's how you do it. Or you pray it in the following. I don't know if you pray it here or not, but I did pray it a number of times, and that is to pray it in the following way: 11 by praying 9 together, and then 2. But make sure that the people know what you're doing, because not everybody's going to cope with this prayer, which is prayer 1, stand up 2, stand up 3, there's no tashahhud, stand up 4, stand up 5, stand up 6, stand up 8. You make tashahhud. Stand up to make the 9th, and then tashahhud and salutation. Makes it 9, and then after that you pray 2 rak'ah. That's 11. Or same thing, and that is to pray 7. So you sit in the 6th, and then you stand up on the 7th, and then you make the salutation in the 7th. Is that understood? All right. And then 2 rak'ah afterwards. Let's make it 9. Then the Prophet of Allah prayed the following 5 rak'ah. This is 5 rak'ah, is all of it together except for one tashahhud in the last. It's not like you sit in the 4th and then you start in the 5th, like we've done in the 6th and the 7th and the 8th and the 9th. No. 5 rak'ah, all together with one salutation. 3 rak'ah, all together with one salutation. That was the etiquette of the Prophet ﷺ in praying the witr. It's good for the Imam as well to introduce the people to this non-known sunnah. People have never seen this before. Now let's talk about the qunut. Fadl.
The qunut, special supplication during the witr prayer. Al-Hasan ibn Ali radiallahu anhu.
Qunut means dua.
So the Messenger of Allah taught me what statements to say in the witr prayer. Oh Allah, guide me along with those.
اللهم اهدني فيمن هديت وعافني فيمن عافيت وتولني فيمن توليت وبارك لي فيما اعطيت وقني شر ما قضيت انك تقضي ولا يقضى عليك وانه لا يذل من واليت ولا يعز من عاديت من جاء منك الا اليك تباركت ربنا وتعالى. نعم تفضل. Translation.
Oh Allah, guide me along with those whom you have guided, pardon me along with those whom you have pardoned, be an ally to me along with those for whom you are an ally. Bless for me that which you have bestowed on me. Protect me from the evil that you have decreed, for verily you decree and none can decree over you. Certainly he whom you show allegiance to is never to be abased, and he whom you take as an enemy is never to be honored. O our Lord, blessed and exalted are you. The sunnah is to make this supplication before bowing.
Before bowing. The sunnah in qunut al-witr is before ruku', not after. That's the sunnah.
This point is based on the hadith of Ubay ibn Ka'b, who said, the Messenger of Allah used to make the qunut in the witr prayer before bowing.
Before bowing.
It is not sanctioned to make the qunut in the obligatory prayers unless some sort of disaster has befallen the people. In that case, it is not in only some of the prayers, but may be said in all, and it will be said after the bowing.
So after the bowing, this is for nazila. What is nazila? Meaning crisis taking place, like a flood, like an enemy imposed upon our, it's a general dua, qunut. And that is in the last rak'ah of any prayer. It's not just the Isha prayer. It's in the obligatory prayer. It may be Dhuhr or Asr or Maghrib or Isha. And it is in the last rak'ah after ruku'. So the after ruku' is the crisis. Before ruku' is the witr. Fadl.
It is not sanctioned to make the qunut in the obligatory. In that case, it's not only in some
Abu Hurairah
who said, when the Messenger of Allah wanted to supplicate against anyone or for anyone, he would make the qunut after the bowing.
As for qunut now after Fajr all the time, who has been in an area where they just make the qunut after the Fajr in the prayer? Which is Shafi'i madhab. Anybody has experienced this? No? Some of them brothers are from Maliki here. The area is Maliki. No? You never heard of this? Okay, then my area in Bilad Sham, Shafi'i, you find some masajid. Every Fajr, the Imam will make qunut in the second rak'ah, and that is after the ruku'. And this is got two things which are not correct. Number one, to specify the Fajr for this qunut, and this is not qunut for nazila. No, it's qunut, just qunut. Number two, qunut nazila is to start with the nazila. It is not a mixture of qunut of al-witr zaid qanat. So you say Allahumma hdina fi man hadayt wa afina fi man. That's for witr alone. Okay, that's for witr alone. But for qunut nazila, let's say that for example, there was an enemy had imposed upon the Muslim. The Prophet of Allah, he raised up his hand and he started Allahumma al'an so and so. Allahumma. He started cursing these people who are fighting the Muslims. He did not say Allahumma hdini fi man hadayt wa afini fi man afayt. That's for witr. Okay, and that is before ruku'. Can I make the witr qunut after ruku'? You must have seen it in the haram and all that. The hadith here is very obvious before ruku', but because of some of the companions, they used to do it in Ramadan after ruku', but after the 15th of Ramadan. في النصف الثاني من Ramadan. So after the 15th of Ramadan, you could make it after and before, no problem. But before that, the sunnah is to do it, and that is before the ruku'. And the sunnah as well to do it, sometimes, but not to do it every night. That's not correct. To make qunut every night in the witr prayer is not correct. Prophet of Allah, he prayed 3 nights of duha, salat al-witr, salat al-tarawih. None of them had any qunut in them. 3 nights. and that is 23rd, 25th, and 27th. And that is the most important. You tell me what's going to happen to any imam who does not make qunut on the 27th night. You tell me. You tell me. What's going to happen to that imam unless he's a really solid imam? He's scared. He did not. If he's scared of him, he'll be at the back of his. 27th night. Prophet prayed 23rd, 25th, 27th. That's the only 3 nights he prayed. Where the people prayed behind him, none of them got qunut. None of them. It's got qunut. And that's we should educate the people to tell them that it's not the qunut every night. It's sometimes not. Sometimes not. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. By this, inshallah, we'll finish my reading. I'm going to read that. And that is the qunut al-fajr is to be bid'ah all the time like this. And that is not authentic. It doesn't have any authenticity here. No, it talks about, but I know what happened is that Hadith Anas radiallahu anhu, he said that كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقرط الفجر ما فارق الدنيا لا يزال يقرط حتى فارق الدنيا. He used to pray the Fajr qunut all the time until he died. But this hadith is not authentic. In the narrators of this hadith, there is somebody who called Abu Ja'far al-Razi, Isa ibn Mahan. He's not authentic, this man. He used to even have one of the hadiths, men remember Allah until you become crazy. This hadith is crazy. Remember Allah until you be called crazy. You're crazy. And also Anas himself in Sahih al-Bukhari, قانت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم شهرة ثم ترك. He made qunut 1 month and he had stopped. So how can Anas himself say Prophet of Allah made qunut 1 month and he stopped? And this is in Sahih al-Bukhari, 100% Sahih. And hadith which is not authentic, as I said, which has got the narrator in it, and yet he says he used to pray qunut every Fajr. So there's to be conflict here. Anas, how can he say every time and some 1 month? So the hadith which is sahih is the one we take, and the one which is not sahih we put it aside. So there's no such things called qunut al-fajr every morning as we see it in some of the countries. But we stop here, as I said, and the following title is going to be, inshallah, for next time is
the
late night prayer. Now we don't have time for that because it's time for the prayer. We have 1 minute or 2 minutes. Isha is going to start, isn't it? Yes, 8 o'clock. So anybody, this is one question. I'm going to take one question from you guys. Anybody can just have a question. Sorry for the online, no questions. Anybody got a question, please? No questions? MashaAllah. Right, online is open for you guys. Anybody want to ask a question quickly? 30 seconds.
I have one clarification.
Go on, Farid,
you know the hadith about the grave, make your house a graveyard. What was that again?
Dude, there's 2 hadiths about making your house at a graveyard. Prophet ﷺ, he said, do not take your house as graveyards and recite Quran into it. Recite Surah Al-Baqarah into it. That's the hadith. So we have to recite Quran in the house. As for the graveyard, it's not a place for recitation. If we've seen a person who's holding a big mushaf and start to recite in the graveyard, it's not from the sunnah. This is only for the house. Number 2, the hadith, that is, don't take your house to the graveyards and make some of your salah into what? Into your house, because there is no salah in the graveyard. So the person who makes his salah all the time is voluntary in the masjid, not in the house. He knows no salah, then he is taking his house as a graveyard. Allahu ta'ala. Is that clarified? طيب سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. مثل هذا كنت يلا. تمام